Well, welcome back, you game changers and people that are up to stuff. Uh, this is Chad Everett Bro Shears. I am the host of the Maturity Project, and this is an episode on one. I've taken a little bit of a hiatus, had a little vacation, and things like I'm always thinking through the lens of the Maturity Project. The 8 different areas of maturity, constantly in that mindset, because there's a lot that we can gain from it. Because it just gives us insights about what we have, what we're missing, why other people are successful in certain ways, and really just like life, right? Like, for me, that's just there's this issue where you constantly have this common sense thing that's going on where people are like, it's a common sense thing, it's a common sense thing. But the reality is that, we have other things to look at. Like, why are we in the situations that we're in? And, why other people are in the situations they're in, and why is it that some people are successful and others aren't? Why is it some people can deal with specific situations and other people can't? And it's interesting to me because it's just this constant belief that we just it's just special people out there. Well, if you think about how incredibly dynamic we are, we're like, we're so incredibly dynamic and complex. We're like a Rubik's Cube upon a Rubik's Cube upon a Rubik's Cube upon a Rubik's Cube. We've got so much that goes into what creates our reality and the viewpoints that we have based off the experiences we've had through life, the fails and the wins, and, our victories, and, all the things that we've gone through that really create the outcome that we have and the perspectives that we see life through. Then you get into these really interesting and complex perspectives of the way life is, the philosophies of life, right? You've got all of these different ones that come along. Then you have the biased preferences like optimism, pessimism, that kind of thing. You have, there's just a lot of ways of looking at life and these formulated perspectives, simulationists, if you will, people that believe that we're just in a simulation, we're not in an actual reality, that things like that. So there's all kinds of ways to look at this life, and I think it's fascinating. But at the same time, I can't speak into a lot of those things. I can speak into however the conversation flows and who I'm speaking with. But overall, the thing that I can navigate through is something that we can all kind of agree a little bit more unanimously on, or a little more consistently with. So, if we look at, maturity, well, maturity, there's 8 different areas of maturity that I teach through the Maturity Project that just helps us understand, hey, there's some reasons why some people are more successful than others. And instead of thinking that they were born to be special, they've just had different influences in their life, and they've had different abilities, and or they've had different resources available to them. Let's take back the abilities concept, because that almost seems like if you're not born with it, you can't have it. As they say, hard work will trump talent any day. Well, the reality is hard work will trump talent if talent doesn't come with hard work. Now, if you're talented plus you know how to work hard, well, hell, now you're in a hell of a position. Unfortunately, though, most people don't do that. Woo! If it ain't a yawn, it's a sneeze. Come on, Chad, get it together. Well, anyway, I was on a little bit of a vacation, and while I was on that vacation, I continued to think about a lot of the things that people deal with, as I'm interacting with people along the way. And, it's just fascinating to me because most people, one, they don't understand that these things are even something you can address, let alone, it's like, it's one of the most important things you'll ever do, but it doesn't have enough entertainment value to keep people going, and that's something that's up to me to create it in a way that is more entertaining, or at least entertaining enough to get people to want to continue to, pursue growth and development. I think a lot of times people just look to it a lot like they look to religion. If they're not regular avid practitioners, they just look to it when times are hard, and they hope to at least get the favor of God to alleviate the challenges they're going through. Well, if you can figure out how to make your development a little more entertaining, you'll be in a better position. So 8 different areas of maturity. Let me run them over real quick with you so you can understand a little bit more. Then we can start talking about how do you start looking for these types of mentors, or how do you look for guidance through these different directions. So the first one's the physical body. A lot of people are on, their social media and stuff, and they're putting all kinds of workout videos out there and all of this. And look, I'm not going to knock people for it. You're going to do it. You're going to do it. There's a lot of reasons for putting that stuff out there, but the physical body itself is an area of maturity that we have control over. You have your genetic hand. Whatever your genetics give you as far as your ability to survive this world, that's there. And that is something that we're not going to change, other than maybe you mitigating your stress, your food intake, your sleep, qualities of life that you can control. Exercise, those kind of things are all within the control realm that you have. And then there's things that are genetically just something out of your control. If you're more prone to having, life-threatening conditions like cancer, stuff like that, you just have to do everything you can to try to prevent that from occurring in your body with regular checkups, things like that. Don't fall into the ignorant side of it and hoping that it doesn't happen, especially if it's genetic for you. But then there's other things that you do have. You can control how much you eat. You can control the kinds of foods that you put in your body. You can control the type of environment you put yourself in overall. It's just certain things you'll have to face along the way that are creating more inconveniences to make that a control something that you do have within your realm. Now, people are like, well, I don't want to bring food with me whenever I go places. Well, I'll tell you right now, I've been in places where you've had next to no options to good, healthy, quality food, but yet still have that one guy in the group out of, 60 plus of us. And he brought all of his prepared foods. They're all in his cooler in his room. And he didn't touch a single thing anywhere we went, and except for those foods. And that was it. He was prepping for a competition when I was in the fitness industry. I didn't knock the guy. It made his life a little harder, but it was in his control, and he made that a point for himself. So he would be one of those people, if you really wanted to find out what it's like to get competition ready, well, he'd be a person to talk to because he was doing it. Now, that's the physical body. There's a lot that goes into physical maturity, not just about the foods we eat and things like that. But when you get into physical conditioning, everything we do with repetition, your body adapts to. So if you want to get further in movements, if you want to, let's say, if you want to be a marathon runner, you're not going to do bodybuilding conditioning. It's not conducive. It's very challenging to make that work out. If you want to be a bodybuilder, you certainly aren't going to be an endurance athlete. If you want to be a better golfer, you're not going to perform for football. You're not going to be doing any other sport conditioning except for the ones that are conducive for golf or soccer, or whatever it is that's the target. So physical maturity, there is no top to it. You just become the highest level that you're capable of accomplishing and achieving yourself, but then you can pivot into something else you may have a genetic predisposition for you're unaware of. They say some people have different body types. Well, science does say that. Whether or not it actually holds validity at this point as we continue to turn science over and over and over until we are finding out new things and all of this. Well, some people have the long body types. They don't really put on weight very easy. They don't put on size. They don't put on fat. They're just really skinny, lean people. There's different morph types, if you will, that they have. And again, I say that, whatever science is saying right now, because science has not settled on it. There was a point in time we thought it was the case, but it's not the case anymore. It is adjusting itself as time goes on. I come from the fitness industry. I spent a lot of time there. You can call me a fitness expert if you choose to. I'm holistically educated. I've done a lot when it comes to fitness. It's not where I decided to leave my life in that cradle, if you will. I wanted more than that in my experience of life, hence the maturity project and working on trying to create the better outcome for a lot of people versus just fitness. So, but in the physical body, you have a lot of those things. You also have the limitations that come with it, and how do you adapt to those limitations? So you do have people that get prosthetics, things like that. So let's not belabor you any further in the physical, just to give you a general idea about physical maturity. Now, there's community as the second area of maturity. Again, you don't have to keep these in this order. It's just whatever's the easiest. I will speak about it in this order because it makes it the simplest to run by. And probably moving forward, I may not even say this again. I may keep it as, the general disclaimer, but then again, maybe not. But anyway, the categories, they don't have to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, wherever each one of those fall. It's the best way to do it is to teach it kind of chronologically for people. So you categorize them in a way that people can comprehend it better. So community is anything beyond yourself. One other person makes community, but it's a community of two people. You're born directly into a community of the doctors, the nurses, whoever it is that's there when you're delivered. You have your parents, if you're both your parents in the picture or not, and then their immediate support systems that you are welcomed into typically. And that creates the first levels of maturity of community. It's small groups because you're not ready for the world anyway at that point. Well, then you grow out into something a little bit more daycare. You get into schools, things like that. You have friends in the neighborhood, maybe online, whatever it is right now as things continue to evolve with technology. But the community is the community nonetheless, whether you see them in person or not. You just have a bonding relationship that does have maturity values, and it does have resource values for you as well. So your community plays a big role in your resource availability, as well as who you become, because as you've heard, I'm sure, that you are the accumulation of the 6 people you keep around you the majority of the time. There's a lot of reasons for that. The psychology of it is when you're interacting with other people, the way that they communicate with you and the way that like we have mastermind groups. Well, those are designed for a reason. That's to help people that are up to something come up with different ideas or support systems. You come up with a new idea. Well, in your community standing with somebody intelligently, especially up to a business thing, you have an idea, you want to practice this idea, and then you put it up to somebody else's scrutiny that actually has a peer value because they're up to something. They're qualified in to be capable of scrutinizing your idea because they are up to something too. They have a business-oriented mindset. If it's a mastermind, it's typically for business. But you have a mindset that has the ability to weigh the value of what you're bringing to it versus bringing this to somebody who's not business oriented. And they just say, wow, this sounds amazing. And they don't know the right questions to ask you to find out the validity of your idea. They're not able to really vet it with you. They're just excited. They may even see that if you're successful with it, they have newfound resource options, like you give them money or access to other people or maybe a job or whatever it is that falls into that category. But that all falls into the community maturity. When you understand who you keep around you, you'll understand who you start to become more like. It's just the way that you think. Thank you, Shay. So when it comes to that, it's more of keep those people around that are up to something. If you want to become more mature, be mindful of those you let into the gates. So those people are the ones at your council. Like King Arthur had his round table and he had people there that he had consultants, and they would consult with him in the process of understanding how to run the kingdom and then what they would take on. I know I'm talking about something mythological, but there's a benefit and there's a reason for the round table. And it has been used throughout the eons because it is a staple for counsel for people that get into things. Every king has his court, including the jester. By the way, any king that kills the jester is soon to fall victim to his own demise, because the jester's job is to give the information to the king that is not desirable, but they deliver it in such a way that it is entertaining enough. And they can see, especially when it was done in the king's, when they were out, and the jester would do their thing in front of a bunch of the king, the people of the kingdom. I forgot what they'd be called, not peasants, but just in general, just the people of the kingdom, because then the king could not only hear what the jester saying, but also watch the reactions of the crowd. So if the jester were to say something that they would laugh about that had an offense value, the king could see that it actually was weighing on the minds of the parishioners. We'll just call them that for now. So it was a way of gauging more than just that. It was something that no one else was allowed to say, was what the jester was given granted permission to say. Any king that wouldn't tolerate the jester would be low in the maturity levels for community, and they would be chopping their own foot off, basically. Losing mobility and functionality of their ability to rule the kingdom. Put this back into something more modern day, you will become the accumulation of the people you keep closest to you, especially those that are the 6 people you keep closest to you. Other things to look at is when they think a certain way, you think in response to the way they do. The more time you spend thinking of that, it's through what's called neuroplasticity. It's where when you think of a specific way, or you think in a specific way, it cuts the pathways through the way the brain works, which is the synapse and the neural pathways, that makes it easier to think that way. You also go through all the challenges that are necessary to understand what the thing is that they're bringing up. So you're looking at it from your own position for scrutiny, if you will, or to vet their idea. so that you can say, well, have you thought about your marketing plan? Have you thought about your personnel? Have you thought about the resources and contacts that you need to make? What about, your own internal time availability, things like that? Those all become, on the higher end of concern and desire, but you're thinking in a model now that gives you you can replicate that model into your own thoughts about your own business positions as you're scrutinizing somebody else's and vetting theirs with them. It's another way of doing this for yourself. Beautiful thing to do, but your community maturity gives you access to this. If you're unfamiliar with your community maturity, it's time to find somebody to actually start modeling that behind, or modeling it with. So you have the third area is cognitive or intelligence. Your cognitive and intelligence values are, you have let's say a limiter that will come by way of your genetics and then the people that give you influence throughout your life, especially in the primary schooling systems. They're not designed for everybody. They're designed for the majority. When you go through primary schools, public schools, that kind of thing, they're designed for more of the majority. They're trying to just get the base level of knowledge out to the majority of the people that are going to be workforce in the economy. It's not necessarily for the people that are going to be the higher end workforce. They have to have that base level, but then they have to go on and learn more and learn from a different dynamic perspective on how to manage people or work with things or create companies, things like that. So you have those things that go through cognitive and intelligences, but there's other variables when it comes to intelligence. There's, memorization. You can strengthen your ability to memorize things. You just have to figure out what your sequence of memorization is, unless you're dealing with something that would be a genetic predisposition or some sort of genetic fall off, where you just don't have a memory value because of could have a traumatic brain injury or something that affects that sector of the brain. But that's, problem solving. It's all of the intelligence quotients fall into the maturity for cognitive and intelligences. So, but that's there. It is something. Do you read on a regular basis? Do you read things that are applicable to you, or do you read for escape? I'm not an advocate for reading for escape. I don't care for it myself. I also don't really suggest any of my students do that either, unless they need to strengthen the discipline of reading. But here's the issue: when you read for escapism and you don't read for developing more knowledge, read for the investment versus the escape is basically the way to look at it. People that read romance novels are very commonly reading for escape. People that read fantasy, very commonly reading for escape. I'm not saying that it's exclusive. You can get a lot of creation out of escapism as well, but it's not as pointed or direct as doing it for investing in who you're becoming. So if you can sit there and fantasize about what it's like to actually have a significant amount of money, and then you put in the effort necessary to accumulate that money and then go through the trial and tribulations of getting to that much money, then great, you're fantasizing your way into it, and it may be something else that got you there, the adjacent values. It could simply be that, 50 Shades of Grey gave you access to wanting to be Christian Grey. Next thing you know, now you're putting in a lot of effort to become Christian Grey, this billionaire playboy that has a way with women. Well, if that's your access, then you gain next level access into developing yourself for finance and or business. Well, great. It gave you access. But if you're doing it solely just to escape, you're just doing it to escape. I'm not a big advocate for that. Now, again, if it's to help build the discipline for reading more, because it does take discipline, you have to discipline your eyes. You have to do exercises to help increase your ability to maintain consistency in reading. It does take something. It's like exercise. The more you do it, the better you get at it. I will caution also, if you're reading, try not to do it just before bed. That conditions you to get sleepy when you read. And you're not as likely to let that information seek in as much as you are to let something else get in the way, or just it be the thing that's like a sleeping pill for you. And I wouldn't take away such a beneficial value doing that. So, but cognitive intelligence, or cognitive and or / intelligence, is an area of maturity. You have complete control over that. It's what you put in, it will be what you get out. And the goal is to try to put in new information, even if it's not necessarily applicable now. You can utilize it at another time, but read for investing in your future, read for your development. It doesn't have to just be reading. It can also be looking back at experiences you've gone through, or become the witness of the experiences you're going through in a way that you're studying your own behaviors and the behaviors of others around you. That's all inside of, the cognitive values of intelligence or maturity of intelligence. Now, emotions is one of the fun ones. It's a tricky one, and most people don't want to touch it. They almost feel convicted by how they feel emotionally. It's the fourth area of maturity. Emotional maturity. You can develop this. This is not something that you do not have the ability to develop. The problem with emotions, for the majority of it, is one, we do have a society that either over influences people in maturity, I'm sorry, not maturity, over influences people in emotion. The narcissistic call that social media has also pushes people towards emotional manipulation. So that it is developing a maturity and emotion. It's just not the desirable outcome because it makes you more socially dysfunctional if you go the route of the narcissistic push that the majority of social media gives us. I'm a victim, poor me, look at what I can't do, but then again, somebody did something to me, blah, blah, blah. Or look at how incredibly attractive I am. I got this many likes. I feel validated. Other people aren't as good as me. I'm better than them because I got more likes, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot that goes into that, but in the emotional world, there is a lot you can develop. It's a lot like riding a bicycle when it comes to emotional maturity. You can develop this, but really, you won't make a lot of stride towards it until you have the application of the emotional challenge. So if it's jealousy, well, you can sit and pontificate all day long about jealousy until you actually have to deal with it. And then you have to I've talked all this shit about emotion and about jealousy and about how I wouldn't be subject to it. And now look at me, I'm just as bad as anybody else, if not then worse than. So, you can't do much with it until it's active. And the goal is to say, okay, I can put a limiter on it at this point because I'm consciously aware and logical enough to say, oh, wow, I'm actually being my own problem. So it is a lot like riding a bike. You can sit and talk about riding a bike all day long. You could write a thesis on it. You could write books and volumes about riding bikes. You can get, physicists involved about riding bikes. But the outcome about riding bikes isn't until you get on the bike, until the reality of it sets in. And then you realize, well, shit, it's a lot harder than I thought it was. Or I didn't think it would feel this freeing until I did it. Because there's multitudes of different things you cannot get by just looking at somebody ride a bike unless you see their emotional reactions. So, but it is one that you do have to have active in yourself in order to develop it. So emotions can be developed. It's just most of us don't have guides on this. And it's not something to plague you in your life. It is a direct indicator of something that you can work on. Also, a lot of times, like people, they shit talk the ego. You will not catch me shit talking the ego. The ego is more of your subconscious mind trying to communicate with your conscious mind, and it's something that you don't have a grasp on. So you make it into a scapegoat and chastise that. Oh, I'm so sorry. That wasn't me. That was my ego. I'm sorry. I did not realize that I'm dealing with a split personality in you. No, it was you. You just don't feel comfortable and confident enough to tell me how you really feel until that thing comes into play. So let's not chastise and bastardize the ego. That's just emotional release of something that you're not willing to deal with because you don't feel socially capable of dealing with it, or socially allowed to, or like you don't have the social capital to do it and get away with it. So you just get to the breaking point, your ego steps in. That's just your ego is kind of like your boxing coach. Like, no, we're done. We're throwing in the towel here. Or get away from my fighter. Back off my champion. All right, so emotions is an area of maturity. It's the fourth area. Fifth area is finance. A lot of people use finance as another avenue of escape. I've worked really hard. I've got this much money. I can buy this in order to validate the fact that I've worked so hard to get past something in my life, and now I'm dealing with these struggles because I feel like everything I do is just work, make money, and I'm not very happy, so let me buy the new car. Let me buy the new phone. I need to upgrade my house. Whatever it is to create that validation, but you're using a financial means of doing it, that's not a very financially mature thing to do. That's just escapism through finance. Again, this isn't about escapism. It's just escapism happens to be an access people get into and create a bad experience in the maturity aspects of, of developing these areas. So finance is also, you can learn how to invest. You can learn how to, not spend beyond your means. What is money? How does money work in the economy? When you hear people that are of wealth, or especially long legacy money is what they refer to it as. New money and legacy money are two different things, but yet they look the same from the outside. Unless you understand when those people came into money, nearly no one with new money will have it in their family line 3.5 generations later. It's very common that it's gone within 3 generations. So that's new money. Old legacy money typically sticks around because they understand the principles of it. They understand how to make it. They know how to make it not run their life. It just becomes part of what they do. New money is typically, it's either it runs their life in the I'm free and I no longer need to worry about money because I've made enough, or I can only obsess over making money and that's all I can do. It's one or the other typically. So that's problems with new money when it comes to that. Legacy money is a whole nother thing. They're sent to special schools. They're surrounded by, again, like the 6 people they keep the most common company. But you will actually hear that conversation in those circles with legacy money. It's who they spend their time with. And then the children of people and legacy money are typically judged by who they spend their time with, because they know the accumulation of what those people are up to in life and how that makes a difference in their own life, so that they know, predictably more about what that person will turn into. It's interesting because it's like, okay, well, you know what? Everybody's special, blah, blah, blah. And they take away the actual depth of reality about why these things have become statements that have transitioned past generations. It's just something that is multi-generation of age when it comes to these statements. They've been around for a while. It's not this generation. It's not the 60s, the 70s, 80s, nothing like that. Goes back for a very long time. But finance is an area of maturity nonetheless, and it is one you can't neglect. So if you want to be able to really move yourself along, finance is an area to look into as well, because you can develop it. Where you are right now is not the top of it all. You will be able to develop more in life, and you'll have to go through some lessons in order to get there, but you can find guides along the way. So business is another area of maturity. It's the 6th area that I have. Now with businesses, it's not just you run your own company, entrepreneurship. It's not just intrapreneurship, which is working inside of a company, but working more of a function of an entrepreneur. But you're not quite a full-blown entrepreneur. You're incredibly supportive, developed inside of the company, and you're usually multifaceted, so you can do multiple different disciplines. But those are entrepreneurs. But you could also just look at business maturity as, well, you come in as an entry-level employee somewhere at some point in time, and you work your way up. What does it take in order to work your way up? What kind of business is it? How do you work through the politics of it and show that you are the better employee, not just because you can talk a better game, but you have the discipline to produce, and you don't need to be a parasite in the process. I've known a lot of parasites in business where they would prefer to play politics than to actually be a technician of the position that they hold, to be the best employee that they can. They'd rather just schmooze with the other people and just do the minimal to get by, or that their maximum ability is the minimal for a lot of other people, but they play politics. Politics will ruin a company because it doesn't create the best outcomes for everybody. It just creates the better outcomes for some. So, but inside of business maturity, you're able to start identifying that more often, and not to make it such a big deal where you go home and you gripe about so-and-so because they're an ass kiss or they're the politics player. It's more of, okay, well, you understand that, but how do you combat that person without becoming a politics type of employee as well? You're still being the better employee. How do you work your way through that? Getting promotions, moving up in the company, those kind of things, you can do that through business maturity. If you don't need to work, you're independently wealthy, then it's also what businesses you do business with. Are you investing in certain companies? Do you buy from them? Things like that. All of that has to do with business maturity. Sexuality is another area. It's the 7th area of maturity. Sexuality is not just sex. It's not just your preferences of who you sleep with. It's also your clothing. It's the way you talk. It's the way you present yourself to other people. Sexuality has a lot to do with overall just how you're expressing yourself to other people. It doesn't mean that who you're expressing yourself to in sexuality is an interest of yours, a love interest or physical interest at all. It's just your style also gets put into the category with sexuality. Colognes, perfumes, that kind of thing. The style of clothing you wear, all of that plays a role. People can overdo it in sexuality, where you see like the OnlyFans type of approach, where they've made sexuality and business, those two combinations with finance. The problem is most people don't realize the outcomes to long-term occupation. It does change you. It's no matter what, everything you do over periods of time changes you. 6 months or more of any continuous stimulus changes your character to some degree. So keep in mind, especially when you're dealing with sexuality, because if you're exploiting your sexuality yourself, it's also the consequence what other people know about you. I have a very good friend of mine, very close person in my life that I love dearly, and she is just was unaware of for the longest time exactly what she was doing with her sexuality when she was dealing with other people in the fitness industry. And now that we have all gotten a little older, she's now realizing what some of that is because of what she's heard them say about her, or how they've decided to treat her now that we've all gotten a bit older. So you have to be aware of what you do that gets you acceptance. I'm not saying she did anything intentional. If you're seductive, doesn't mean that you're intentionally seductive. It could just be like, typically charming is the male version of seductive. Men can be seductive, women can be charming. It's just, how do you exchange the words? Really, women are charming. They are. This person in particular that I'm talking about, she is also incredibly charming. But seductive would be one that's probably a better descriptor, but take out the malicious or the manipulative intent. It's just the way she is that is expressing herself to other people. Consequences on the back end, though, is just that how people treat her. So, and some of that stuff, when you're especially in moments of weakness, it can really get in and can hit hard. It could also invalidate a lot about you because they think that is because of their actions. You can think that's all they care about is something that has to do with sex. So, but sexuality is a very big category, but it is an area that you can develop yourself in as well. Another one that I'll make a mention of that falls under the category for sexuality and maturity is if you're constantly in relationships with people that you feel that they only care about you because of like some sort of physical attribute. How did you meet them first? What kind of conversations have you had with them? And what was the bonding elements between you and that other person? Did you meet them in a club where you were dressed in a certain way and, you may have been scandalously clad, and, looking very sexy, and that person's there and they're just trying to get away from the challenges they have in life. And you're there trying to get away from the challenges you have in life. Well, you create a bond. You become partners of some sort, whether it's just hookups, which is unfortunately common now in our society because relationships are throwaways more than they are meaningful, unfortunately. But you still start off someplace. So if you want to meet somebody that'll have a meaningful relationship with you, figure out what you like doing, not just what you like to use to escape. So if you go to the nightclubs to escape, you're probably going to dress in a way that you feel better about yourself, maybe helps you stand out, kind of peacock a little bit, may not be wearing underwear under thin material or something, like, oh, you're going to notice this, kind of thing. Unfortunately, though, the people that you draw in are also the same. They're likely not going to change a whole lot either over time. You may give them that permission to say, you know what, in time, you're going to grow up, you're going to develop, you're going to be a better person, blah, blah, whatever the conversation is you have in your mind. And then you realize when they start looking at other girls or other women or other men or whatever it is, that they're really not changing, because that may be a coping mechanism that you bonded with. But you outgrew the coping mechanism because they satiated the need for it, but you didn't do it for them. And then you get into this whole thing about validating and invalidating yourself, blah, blah, blah. Sexuality is an area for maturing, and you can actually overcome that and get into better, healthier relationships. But it does, in my opinion, and from my experience, all 8 areas are going to help give you a better relationship anyway. Is the more you put effort into things. People like to be in relationships with people that are up to something similar to themselves. You don't have to be up to the same thing, just up to something. Feel good about what your partner's doing in life. If you're doing something and addressing all 8 areas of maturity as well, then what is not to like about you? You're constantly doing something for development and for your own outcomes for long term. So sexuality is the 7th. 8th is spirituality. Mind you, again, as I speak about this, spirituality is not religion, but you can access spirituality through religion. You do not need religion for spirituality. For me, spirituality is purpose. What are you doing here? Why are you here? What are you up to? What do you want to accomplish in the lifespan that you have? And how would you make an impact that you have lived? No one wants to live in a nihilist experience in a way that they don't experience something else in the future, that they're not known for something beyond, maybe a party story. Reincarnation for me is not the spiritual reincarnation of a soul into another, being or to another human, like the Buddhist concepts. It's not that at all. It's the ability to speak about somebody else and create them in somebody else's world. So if I speak about my father, I will reincarnate him in your world. If I talk to you and you have enough interest to understand who he was, I'll happily share him, and you'll get a real experience of him through my stories about him. That's reincarnation for me. Spirituality is purpose. My purpose is the Maturity Project. My purpose was founded by me sitting around going, somebody has got to do something. this sucks. Everybody is challenged. People are just, they're becoming more feral, even though we're more sophisticated. We have more technology and we have our superstructures of cities and all the rest of this stuff and all these things, but we're becoming more and more feral. And what I mean by feral, again, is just by its own definition is, wild. We're just wild. We're coming up with things that we should be able to bond together, develop through, and mentor each other in the process. And the reality of it is that we're not doing it. What we're doing is we're creating more reasons to dislike other people. So there's that entire process when it comes to that. Just be aware that you can do something about the way it is. A lot of us will sit back and be like, you know what? Fathers in the homes, that'll fix it. Well, that's for the next generation. But what about now? What about for our children now? What about for the single mothers? What about for the future altogether? Just be like, okay, well, you're going to pontificate the best outcome. No, do something about it. So what can we do? Find out what you can do. For me, the Maturity Project is a way of getting there. If you get somebody to understand that these are base level areas of maturity that you can develop in a way that creates more of a fulfilling life, well, guess what? We can do something about it. So we can go and make a difference in somebody else's life. You don't have to go in and say, I know what's best for you, because that's not the way you do this. That's not what a mature person does. That's what a righteous person does. I'm not a righteous person. I know that with my ultimate wisdom, is that I don't know everything. I've only had the life experiences that I've had. And I've only been able to come up with the outcomes that I've been able to come up with, conceive of, and in hindsight, go back through and try to figure out different outcomes. But that's all that I have access to. So I can't step in and tell people they're doing something right or wrong unless I understand their goals and understand their attachments to those goals and the resources they have available for it. And then what would be best to help navigate through that beyond that. But I'm not one to assign a lot of right or wrong to people. That's not the way that I do my life. I don't do things like that because I find that creates more of a divisive outcome. Or a divisive outcome. So, but for me, purpose is to help cut through the nonsense of sitting around just saying that everybody else is doing something wrong. Well, I want to develop, and I'm incredibly driven to develop. I'm hooked on it. I'm addicted to this. This is my life choice. Now, the best way for me to be able to really move along in a way that makes a bigger difference for everybody is that I stay open to there's other ways of doing things. If I want to see a better outcome, well, we got to look at why we are where we are and what was the more ideal outcome and what can we create that would be similar to that ideal outcome that is evolved in a way that would be considered to be better. But to understand better is also not an easy thing. The best way to do this is to get more people involved with this entire project, the Maturity Project itself. I am not the most mature person in any one of these areas. I just have the gift of having insight of it. When I came up with this, I just realized as I went through it, what are all the problems people are dealing with? And I started going, okay, well, there's physical. I worked in the fitness industry, so I could look in and be like, okay, well, people are overweight. They don't feel good about themselves. They're having challenges. They want better relationships. I'm in the physical industry, personal training and developing people through fitness, things like that. So, all right, well, I have what I have access to, and I keep hearing from these people, there's other things. And I'm like, what can I do with this? Well, then I'm like, okay, well, what about their community, their friends, their circles of people that they spend time around who are sabotaging them and who are supportive of them, and just because the person doesn't make you feel good all the time does not mean that they're not supportive of you. You shouldn't want sycophants anyway. But unfortunately, with the concepts of safe spaces and the rest of this bullshit that we have coming out of universities, we have the desire to make everything feel good. In the optimistic movement, well, if you're not happy, then something's wrong. Well, that takes away the work effort and the value and benefits of suffering. So there's a lot of benefits when you come through this, but I'm going through it going, okay, well, community, what's going on with this? How can we make life better through people's communities? If you don't have community around you, it's easy to be depressed because you don't have people to actually communicate with that can actually let you know you're living life in a way that is understandable because they experience it as well. We are hierarchical creatures. We are community-based creatures. That is the way that our species functions. We do very well with each other. If you're isolated, that's the fastest way to find mental illness, through isolation. So community is a big part of our maturity and overall development. Then we get into the cognitive and intelligence values. Most people stop learning when they get out of school. They learn for entertainment reasons. They don't learn for anything intentional. There's no investments in becoming the next level or the evolved person until it's time for a promotion. Then they put some cram time in, or they go to university and then they weld their mind shut. Developing your levels of intelligence and your knowledge base of maturity is actually incredibly refreshing and invigorating when you learn the right styles of learning for you. I was one of those people. I did very poorly in school, public school. I did a lot better when I got out of public school and I started learning my own methods for developing. Oh, you're welcome, Shay. Oh, emotions. My God, man. How many people try to stay away from that? I'm a white, straight man in the United States. I grew up in a time when they're like, don't express your emotions. And the next thing I know, it's like a fucking dam broke. And the next thing you know, everybody's like, express your emotions. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me how you're feeling. I'm like, there's got to be a balance here, and how do you discover your own balance and if it's enabling or disabling you, if it's something that's truly healthy and mature for you, so yeah, finance, I got into that too. And I'm like, okay, well, it's another challenge that people deal with. Well, if they're financially going through hardship, you know how hard it is to get yourself on track when you're struggling financially. It sucks. Now that can be an amazing motivator, or it could be the thing that you hate and you try to hide from it. Like as if it's like, the sheriff's going to come round you up and put you in jail or something. You're that afraid. It's like all the stuff that we do that just gets us to try to, avoid these things. Finance has been an area that is my own area of maturity focus that I've got to develop in and that I have been developing in, but it's an area. And I'm like, well, this can ruin people's lives. Business. How many people complain that they're in a bad company or they're in the wrong place or whatever? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. It's a job. It's not supposed to be Disneyland for you. It's not supposed to be the greatest thing in your life to experience. It's a job. If you don't like working for somebody, what are you doing to get away from working for other people? Are you an entrepreneur? If not, what can you do to become that? How can you start your own company? How can you do your own thing? What are you learning right now to develop a future in business that's going to separate you from where you currently are? Or would you rather spend the next 30 or 40 years miserable working with somebody or working for somebody? It's completely up to you. But this is what people feel convicted by, so they stay in the same company. Like, I've been with this company for 15 years. Great. You want another 15 years of being miserable? What do you think that's going to do to you? It takes 6 months to change your character in any consistent stimulus. It's just the thing is, you don't necessarily understand the changes you're going through in that 6-month window because you're there every day. You're in that every day. You don't realize your thinking processes are being codified in that particular direction on a daily basis. This is the same thing when you want to make changes for the positive. You have to put a stimulus in place that helps you create a different thinking process. It's just easier when somebody else does it because you're a victim in the situation. You just have to deal with it versus what it takes to actually create it for yourself. It's a lot harder to create for yourself than it is to have somebody else do it for you. Now, like in these types of circumstances anyway. I watched a movie and I'm not a big fan of the movie itself because it was kind of wasn't the best. But in it, they talked about, and I forgot the name of the movie now, Sucker Punch. Yeah, the movie Sucker Punch is back early 2000s. And in it, they said, stand for something or fall for anything. And I'm like, fuck, man, that's good. Stand for something or fall for anything. And then I'm like, wait a minute. So somebody else came up with the concept of the business that I'm working in. They had the bravery and the desire and enough effort and the right resources to line it up to make it a thing that now gives me the benefit of working for them. What do I not know that they do? What experiences they had and that I haven't had? Oh, and what can I gain from currently working for these people moving forward to make my life different? So business is an area I'm like, God, I can really modify this and change it. Sexuality is one that, in my own experiences, I became fairly mature in. It's not a brag or anything. I put a lot of focus in the earlier stages of my life, 20s and 30s, mainly, we'll say 20s and 30s. My 40s, it's not anywhere near as important to me now as it used to be, but it was a lot that I learned through understanding that and what was a driver for me and what did I miss out on when that was a major focus for me. So it really gave me some insights on it. And then to realize that sometimes I made decisions that had nothing to do with my long-term outcome. That was more of an immediate need. And to be truly honest with myself about how that served me and how it served other people and what it did for my reputation and the other person's reputation and what my maturity levels did for those relationships to those other people, long-term consequences, not just the short-term stuff. And then back down to the spirituality, the eighth area of maturity, purpose. What the fuck are you here for? What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to make a difference? Do you want to make a difference? I promise you, after everybody that I've talked to, and I've known thousands of people in my life, and I will tell you this: everybody wants to make a difference in some way. The problem is nobody gets organized enough or realize that you have 8 different areas to develop yourself in. That's for maturity basis that gives you the fulfillment and value of life. You know, when you meet somebody who's had a fulfilled life, there's something about them that is so attractive. You get pulled into it. They've traveled the world, right? They don't necessarily have to have, but use as an example, they've traveled the world. They've been all over the place. They've been in how many different countries? And when you hear that this person, even if you don't even know this person, somebody else tells you about them, they're creating them in your life, in your world, the reincarnation thing, but they're still alive, right? They're being made real to you because you're hearing a story about them. And they're like, they've been in how many different countries? How many different places on this planet have they been? Continents? Like, how many people do you think that they've known? What is extraordinary, right? It's like, wow, that's wild. That's crazy, because that's a fulfilling experience in life. They've been places, they've been in these different cultures. The maturity program is about, and the maturity project is about creating fulfillment in your life. That does not mean you need to travel all over the place. It doesn't mean you need to throw on a cape and be a superhero. Nothing like that. It's just that this is how you can become more satisfied with the experiences that you've had. And how can you give yourself a solid foundation every time you deal with a challenge that helps you progress faster through those challenges. And then you look at it and say, you know what, I can become something greater because I've gone through this. So that's a maturity project, and its intentions. Now, on the other side of this is, who do you follow? You have these people around you all the time, but most of us either take it for granted. They don't know how to actually decipher what other people are mature in. Your parents are more mature than you are in all kinds of different places in their life, and they haven't even taught you about all of them. You just have gotten what they felt was necessary, especially at the timelines you were dealing with certain things. So, but who do you follow? There's somebody available all the time. My channel's here, the Maturity Project on YouTube. You can follow me, become a subscriber. List in. I'll even send you a starter pack for this if you send me an email. I do have it in the descriptions, but send me an email to yourmaturityproject@gmail.com. That is YOUR maturityproject@gmail.com. Send me over an email. Just tell me a little bit about you, that what you're up to and what you'd like to accomplish, and I'll send you back that email. And it's just a place to start. It's nothing crazy. It's not a ridiculous document. But who to follow? I'm up to a lot. I'm not at the Tony Robbins level. I'm not at the Jordan Peterson level. Nothing like that, obviously. I'm sitting here in my living room on my black couch, not even real leather. It's faux leather. And I've got my, painting here behind me from the TLG. That's actually TLG, the Leah Gardner. An amazing friend of mine that painted it, and it's the American Psycho. So I'm not at that top level right now. I am where I can give guidance and direction. And I really hope that, people don't look for that lottery winning thing or that person that is so incredibly well developed that, they're that Jesus person, in their life, that's the one that they're going to follow. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. It's one of the joys of reading is that most of the time what you read is after the person has already made enough mistakes that they have a story worth telling. Well, you're catching me in the midst of writing the book. This is the book of my life, and there will be books that follow this, especially as I get more people involved that are more mature in each one of these areas. But who to follow? You could follow me. Follow anybody else in your life. I mean, there's plenty of great people that you can really just get behind that can do this. I mean, we find it on social media all the time. We see somebody that's exercising in the gym and they're making a video. For the person that's not in the same condition as they are, well, they'd be a good person to follow. There's plenty of great people to follow in this life. It's just most of us just kind of like we get so caught up in the shit we're dealing with that we don't realize we can get out of it. We're stuck in the muck. But if you want to get out of the muck, there's a way of doing it. And there's other people that are figuring it out. They're not going to stop until they get out of it. So you got to look for those that are in the thrive model. So there's avoidance, survival, and thrive. For dealing with challenges in life, conflicts and challenges. Avoidance is you don't do anything about it. It's the first level. Most of us learn this at a very young age, but then we're pushed into surviving, which is where you deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with. And then from there, you come up with a way of being able to overcome that thing, but that's typically where you stop. You don't typically go a whole lot further than that in the survival model. But in thriving, you obviously have to survive, but you're looking for what got you in that situation in the first place. So find people that understand that thrive model, the ones that have learned from their previous mistakes and that have made a better outcome, and they're actually better at life. They're better at their business. They're better at the dealing with the things. Any one of these 8 areas that I mentioned already, that they're better at it. And it gives you an option to be able to overcome those things too. So, and where do you get started? You get started right where you're at. Send me that email. I'll send you over that document, and you can just list out your own areas of where you know you are in the areas of maturity, and you can start working on it from there. It just gives you something to work with. It's not to tell you how to do this stuff properly, because I can't tell you that. I can't tell you how to do this exactly as a blueprint. I can tell you what to do when it comes to the 8 areas of maturity, how to develop those areas, especially the more I know you, the more I can offer insights. But really, the reality is that, look, man, you got time. Every day that you go by, you don't work on something in these areas, is a day that you're putting it in your past that really doesn't do much at all for your future, except for the consequences of that time. Because a lot of the times we're not doing something that's going to benefit us overall in the long term by accident. You can do it by trying to survive, and then you just hit you just hit yourself. You hit the head of the nail without really knowing you did it. But just get started where you're at. Find somebody that can give you some insights and some guidance. I'd rather spend my time on a daily basis doing 1% more for each one of these areas to make life a little different, to make the outcome a little more beneficial and desirable. So that's what I'm working on. So you can follow me, subscribe to the channel, The Maturity Project on YouTube. And again, send me over that email, and I'll send you back the document that help get you at least started. What I would suggest everybody do with that document is just put it someplace that you can look at it on a daily basis, usually first thing in the morning, and to put I call it polarizing your mind. You put the right polarity on the outcome you're looking for. And then at the end of the day, you just do a quick little recap. Put a maturity journal together. It's pretty easy. Beginning of the day, what are you expecting, or what would you like to take on the day? And then you go through your day, and then at the end of it, you qualify at the end and say, did I do it or not? And what did I learn? You'd be surprised how far that gets you. So, all right, that's it for today. It's the Maturity Project. I am your host, Chad Everett Broshears. Do share this video with people in your life that you'd like to make a meaningful conversation or make a difference with. Make it the basis of the conversation. I also do encourage you to subscribe to the channel. That does help with my placement in the whole YouTube world. Especially if you really want to make a difference in somebody else's life, you can start contributing to the channel itself. Put comments in the comment section. You could also send me comments in the email. Tell me a little bit more, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you feel that you do have some insights on something that you'd like to share. I'd like to bring it out as well. We all have community contribution for this, so let's do it. Let's work on this together. Like the video, put a little like on it. That helps me with the algorithm. And then, we got a lot to do in this life. We got a lot of time to do it too, for hopefully most of us do anyway. And if not, let's just make that time as big as the best benefit we possibly can. So the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Not everybody that's created bad in this world or undesirable things started off with the intention to create something, miserable for other people. There's plenty of things that people started off with great intentions, but it's either their maturity or the people that got involved after them and their maturity that became the problem. So, all right, let's not make a super highway there. Right now, social media is trying to get us there by making us so damn narcissistic and driven that everybody else is just the problem and not us. Let's get to work on ourselves, okay? All right, till next time. Again, this is the Maturity Project. Thank you for checking in and for working with me. So, again, let's get up to something. Let's do something great together. We'll see you.